Hey everyone, welcome back. In the second part of Build Your Own Redis-like server purely in vanilla Node.js, we'll be starting out with covering the very basic setup required like the simple VS Code and Node version, and also we'll be creating a basic server.js file where it is like a main core entry file for the whole server, and a test server file also just as a kickstart search, so that acts as a main base for it, and also a util logger file so that we'll use the debug sort of the same debug logging thing with each module level and as such. So I'll give you a walkthrough of that. And in the main basic server.js file we'll be creating a basic TCP server, and I'll walk you through by giving some telnet commands also and how the data gets processed. And also we'll be covering a very basic data transfer, how the data transfer going to happen. Like, let's say I'll be having a Redis CLI tool, right, the actual Redis CLI, and we'll connect to our basic TCP server and understand how the data is being coming to our server. And from that point, all right, so on to the very basic VS Code setup. If you can see, they are like just the WSL because I'm using Windows for the tutorials, and I always prefer to work on Ubuntu. That's like actually a developer friendly, right? So that's pretty much on the VS Code setup side. It's a very basic, just these three extensions installed, and they are like ESLint and normal GitHub, IntelliCode, Node.js based thing. Nothing fancy. You can tweak this accordingly. And moving on to the Node version, we'll be using Node version, latest Node version 22. Let's get dive into the very basic file, that is server.js file. So let's begin. I will be giving you a proper walkthrough of the lines of code, but not like writing each and every line because it's kind of unnecessary time waste, because there are like few lines will be like self-explanatory, and I'll be covering all the very basic stuff anyway. Like if there are some new things that I feel that's really needed to be explained, like logger.js file where I'll explain the how the debug functionality, like each module based logging, how that can be written basically with the vanilla JavaScript again, so that no need to rely on that. All these I'm emphasizing on the vanilla node just because this will give you an opportunity to understand how the actual packages, like the third party packages, if you want to use, so that will help you to understand the actual crux of it, right? So overall this project also, the aim is to not just, though we have so many client libraries, right, but the main crux is like, if you start building your own, and that too with a vanilla ecosystem like JavaScript, like purely for the browser, let's say, and for vanilla node.js, the reason I'm telling it as vanilla node.js is, um, we are writing on the node.js because simple JavaScript can't run it. So we need a runtime environment that is node.js as the main standard, right? So that's how it is. Let's begin with the server.js file. And its first thing is, of course, will require the net module. And for now I'll just initiate the default values, the port and host. Though yes, we can get it from the environment variables or from the config json and as such, but for the sake of the simplicity, in this specific part I'll be just creating it as a normal constants, and I just created the um, server with net.create server method. Now we'll be having a listener on connection, which is like a main thing, right? Where for the new, so for the new every client, this connection handler will be triggered, and this is like an entry point for every data on. So we'll be having a data listener on the socket, which is like each for each client we'll be having a socket object, right? And for that, for every data, we'll be just converting that to a proper string, because the data would be here, it would be like a buffer, and from there I'm just writing it down as a response, just that having an prefix as res colon and the actual string what we got from the client. That's pretty much in the data listener. For the end listener, for now we'll just use console log, and we'll just mention the client disconnected. Okay, that's it. Yeah, if you see, it's a very basic thing. I'm just using a net inbuilt package, creating a server, and actually having a listeners for the on connection. For every client we get this bootstrapped callback, and inside we'll be having some more actual listeners, that is on data, and also when the connection gets ended, right? Now we'll actually listen at a specific port and host, that is simply like server.listen, the port value and the host. That's it. and I'm printing at current server running at so and so at the port. So now let's run this one. Node server.js. If you can see, server running at so and so 6379, and of course the port for the default Redis server is 6379, so I'm using the same thing over here. Clear? Open another terminal, and over here, give me a moment. Yeah, so now over here we'll just use telnet to connect to this server. As you can see, connected so and so, and here also actually we can have a log stating that okay, though so and so has been connected, but I'll just directly send some information to send some data to the our server, right? So now let's say um, maybe from telnet, and as you can see, res colon the data what we are converting to the string, and we're just returning that as a response. Clear? Maybe a plus b plus a plus b. I hope this is clear now. So to give a summary, we just created a simple TCP server, right? And we just had a proper handlers, and from the telnet, as you guys can see, whatever the information we are passing, we are just returning that as is, just with the prefix of res colon, and you can see the same response. So yeah, that's pretty much on it. We'll begin with a first filtering out all the actual debug namespaces required. Namespaces as in the same modules like server, if you want to have any logs on the server page, or if you want to have any logs on the DB level persistence side, or any of the modules, right? So if you see here, debug namespaces, we are trying to get the array notation, and by default we are first getting from the debug, like if there are any values, of course with a comma separated if at all, else we'll just going it as star. So star self-explanatory again, print all the possible namespaces, no need to filter based on the namespace. So that's the main crux of it, and we're falling back to star, and we're so, and again we're splitting, and of course trimming also, and all the values will be over here debug namespaces as an array. Now we'll just create a simple function logger, and the first and the argument is namespace. So like whenever we're creating an instance of a logger, like let's say on the server.js, we'll mention that it is server namespace. And for the other things like persistence, we if you have a persistent.js file, then there will pass the namespace as persistence. So yeah, that's how it is. And now I'll just export this one as logger as is. Clear? So now if you see, for instance, let's say on the server.js file, we'll call this logger function with namespace as server, and by default, let's say if you're not passing any debug value, then this debug namespaces will be simply star. Okay, this is clear now, right? Now what we'll do, we'll actually we'll return, so this logger function will return like for now like four default log levels, that would be like info, warning, error, and debug, right? What we'll do, we'll create a log instance as like this, and log function will accept two arguments. One is like more, and the actual log message. Clear till now? Now we'll be returning an actual object for this logger function. Yeah, and here we'll be passing like four modes of what we are supporting. Let's begin with log, and log will be a function again, and here we'll just pass the message. Okay, and now we'll call the actual thingy, like the actual log inside the function. And here if you see, this is like a mode is log again. Don't get confused you over here, but I'll just give you a simple walkthrough. And if I just clone this one, so log, error, warning, and this would be, let's call it debug. Yeah, four log levels we are supporting as an example, like in our case. So oops, sorry, over here, and this would be error, this would be warn, debug. I hope this is clear now. So I think if you see here, the logger, it is accepting a namespace, and we are exporting that over here. Now if you see simply on the server.js, we'll require this logger file, and we'll call this logger function with the namespace of server. Now that specific log object will be having that returned value will be this object, right? And what you can do, let's say if you're just calling it as logger, then logger.log will actually call this message again inside. So if you that's the reason you're passing this as each level. I'll come to this thing. Now let's say if we just simply maybe call like this console.log.message off, we'll just pass the message. Clear? We are not using debug namespaces for now, but let's try to include this one over here, like console.logger dot require of logger, and we'll pass over here as server. Clear? Now this logger instance, if you see, will have these 4 levels, right? And with the namespace as server. Namespace here it will be server. Let's remove this one. Now let's say we'll just simply swap this one with logger.log, server running at so and so. Now let's simply run npm start. As you can see, there wouldn't be any difference because we didn't change actually. Like we can actually add this one also. Maybe let's add something like this, and also oops, this, yeah. Now let's run this again. Got it? Log colon server. So now if you see, at this stage there isn't any much of a use case, right, for the logger.js file, like what is the need as such. Now instead of mode, maybe let's just swap this with space, namespace. Yeah, now let's run it again. See, the namespace is server running and at so and so. And if you see by simply looking at any of the log message, you know, okay, which module or which namespace this specific log message belongs to, instead of the generic console.log as such. Yeah, and now what we'll do, we'll actually filter with the exact logic, so that we'll consume the debug also. I'll give a walkthrough of that also. If that is not the case, star mean it basically need to log all the different namespaces based log messages. If not, if I just simply pass server, then it will only print all the log messages of the specific server namespace, and it should not print any of the other namespaces log messages. I hope that is clear. Now we'll actually construct a proper log message format, and if you see here, log message I'm constructing with the actual date, like the current date, to ISO string format, space, and what is the mode. So it will be like log, error, warning, or debug, and with a proper syntax, like which is wrapped with the square brackets, the namespace what it is being sent, and the actual message. I think this is clear now. I will just simply swap this one with log message. Now let's run it again. If you can see, with the proper ISO formatted date, time, the log, and the actual namespace, and the message of the. Now if you can see, this is being printed for any of the namespace irrespective of it, right? Now we'll start using this one to actually properly print the actual debug namespaces that needs to be logged, and we should skip all the other namespaces, right? So we'll wrap this line with the proper if condition, and that would be debug namespaces includes star, right? Oops, star, or debug namespaces includes namespace, like the given namespace, right? Clear? I hope this is clear. So what we're checking is, if the debug namespaces include star, right, then print whatever the namespace it is, right? If not, if that is not the case, let's me just wrap this properly. Okay, now let's say if I pass debug as persistence namespace only. Now in that case, the server dot instance, the namespace is server, right? And this if condition will be resulted as false, and we are not actually printing console.log or whatever the log level that is. I hope this is clear. I'll be passing down some examples so that you will be able to understand the crux of it. And if you see here, we're filtering irrespective of the log level also. But I it's always better for any error message we should print irrespective of the debug namespaces and all. So what we can do, we'll be using a simple if condition. So like if mode equals to error, right, we'll just print with the proper log message format, the same log message pattern, and in the error mode, and we're basically returning it early return, so that we are not skipping any of the error messages irrespective of the namespace what we are trying to provide over the debug environment, right? Now I'll just give you a simple walkthrough. Let's first do the npm start again, just to make sure that everything is working fine. Log server is running at so and so, and namespace is server, clear, right? Okay, now let's open package.json file, and we'll just pass the environment variable as maybe util, right? And I'll just save it and run it. So debug util, server is already started, but as the namespace over here is server, but we explicitly told that print only for the logs which are part of the util namespace. Right now we don't have any util namespace logger instance, so it's not printing, like you can't see. But what we can do, we'll just create another instance, right? Just for the understanding purpose, logger util for now, right? And I'll just pass it over here. Now what we'll do, we'll start using this logger util just for the sake of for you to understand clearly. Logger.log, and maybe local client connected, right? Now let's start npm start debug is util. Now let's expand this one, and let's connect to telnet. And if you can see, util socket client connected. I hope it's clear. So whatever the namespace we pass, the logs will the actual logs filtering will happen, and it will print only that specific namespace logs. It won't print the other. Now we'll test the other one also, just for the sake, as we have this case, right? Irrespective of anything, we should actually print for irrespective of the passed namespace over here on the debug, we should make sure that all the error level log messages should be printed irrespective of the namespace. So for the sake over here, logon.error, what we'll do, we'll just print server error, server namespace error log message. Okay, start, and we'll maybe just connect again. So now if you can see, the actual message came, even though this is like the server namespace, but we have that condition stating that we need to make sure that irrespective of the filtered debug namespaces, we should make sure that all the error messages of any namespace should be logged. And if you can clearly see, the server namespace is got printed, and this is actually passed down to std error. I hope this is all clear now. Now let's remove the temporary things what we just added over here, and let's start the server. And I think debug util, so let's revert this also, so we can just pass like this, or maybe let's remove, because anyway we added that as a anyway we added star as the default fallback option over here, right? So okay, so now let's start the server. When we got the server namespace log message, server running at so and so 6379. Now we'll actually connect to our service via the core Redis CLI tool itself, right? And make sure it's installed again. So if I just hit enter, now if you can see, it is connected, Redis CLI, to our thing. I think it's better to add a log, maybe client connected. I think it's fine for now. But yeah, if you can see now, let's pass something, maybe from Redis CLI, enter. If you can see, protocol error got R as a reply type byte, but if you see, client is also disconnected because it got crashed. Now what we'll do, we'll just actually print what exactly we got it over here, so that it will help you to understand in which data format we are receiving the message. And also this will basically give you a better picture how to parse the Redis protocol. So that's a different topic that we'll be covering in the next video. Now let's print this one, rec data, right? Now npm start, and Redis CLI. So we got, if you see here, we got star one, and if you understand clearly, there is a next line actually came, and we got $7. I'll get into the details, the actual REST protocol and how the data will be transferred across the client and server. But for our sake, let's see, star one, Then in the next line we got $7, and in the next line we got command, and there's an empty line also, right? Then the cursor came actually over here. Now what we'll do, we'll actually pass the bare basic commands, like maybe set foo bar. Okay, if you see, Redis CLI crashed, stating with an error, got R as a reply type byte. Okay, and if you see here, socket.write res request data. Okay, so it is not able to parse the actual value we are sending over here, that is like res colon the request data would be foo bar. Okay, now it is not working as expected because we are not returning the expected response structure that Redis CLI is expecting. Okay, now what we'll do, just for the sake of closing the loop to understand the pattern, I'll just pass the actual data that Redis CLI is expecting. This in-depth will definitely oops this in-depth will be definitely covering in the next video, like why exactly we need to send in this fashion and all. Stay with me, but for now let's try to close the loop. I started the server again, Redis CLI set foo bar. Okay, now Redis CLI didn't crash, we got okay also, as the same what we passed it over here. But if you see, we got a different set of messages now. So *3, then $3, set $3 again, foo $3 again, bar. If you skip the number based anything which like a star or dollar, you would simply see that okay, set foo bar. That's exactly what we sent. So the pattern over here is simple, but I'll cover in the next video. But this is all. We just tried. We actually created a very basic TCP server, right? And we are trying to connect to this basic TCP server via the actual Redis CLI. And we have gone through the basic commands like set foo bar, and also the moment we just connect to the server, by default the Redis CLI on connection to the server, it is passing this statement also. Understood? I hope this is clear till now. That's all for the functional side of the case for the part 2 of this course. I'll just revert this to, maybe we can just keep as is for now, and I'll just have the commented file log also for you, because I'll be pushing all these changes to chapter 2 branch. Okay, now we'll create a very basic server.test.js file, and I'll give you a walkthrough of it also. Alright, so starting with a very basic server.ts file, I'll be having, so I'm not writing each line by line for the test cases from now on. I'll be explaining all the details, but just to save time, because I'm not telling that the tests are very not that important. No, it is really important, and for the entire course, we'll actually rely on the test cases to make it robust. Yeah. Now to begin with, we are using net. I'll just go through because we need to connect to the actual server, right? So we'll be using the same net module, and for the test cases also, we are not relying on any third-party packages. Node version 22 does support the test interfaces and all. I'll be giving a walkthrough. So if you see here, we have a node assert, again the inbuilt, so we can use for all the assertions, and before, after, and the very basic test instance like the test function also, so that we can have a many different test cases by using this test function. Now moving on to the next block, I am creating a Redis client as a, maybe we can call it as a global in this specific instance, and having a function connect to Redis, which is returning a promise, and we are trying to connect to the local, the same host, and the port is 6379. If it is all okay, resolve, and if there is an error, reject. Simple. Connect to Redis function, it will make sure it will connect to the default port 6079. Clear? Now we'll be having a very basic before and after blocks. If you see before, so for the entire test suite, we'll first try to connect to Redis as the main thing, and at the very end, if the Redis client exists and if it is not destroyed, we'll close the connection. Simple. Before and after. Now I'll be having a um, placeholder function on error. I'll come to this specific line very soon, like this specific block. Now let's jump on to the main command, send command. This will make sure that for every test case, uh, it will write that message, like it will write as in like passing that message to the our server. And for the very first, like once for the first occurrence of the data event, will consume the data and will remove the listener like on error. The reason is, for if you don't remove this listener for the very first time, like for every instance of the data, it the listeners keeps by building up and will reach the max listeners events and all. So that's why I'm using a common placeholder function, and if there are any errors or as such, I'll just reject that, and basically the whole loop gets done at that instance. So I'm making sure that once we consume the data, like for the like for every call, like for every instance, once we consume the data, I'm just removing the listener also, which is not required. And we are removing, but the actual listener hook is happening at the last line. I hope this is clear. It will be clear the moment I'll actually start using this send command and the on error also. So let's actually write the very basic test case, right? Should set and get a value. Simple. And the same thing what we did over here with the actual Redis CLI, set foo bar. The same command, set foo bar, and assert strict equal this set response what we get from the server. I'm just comparing that whether that is exactly equal to okay or not. And again this send command get foo, we actually didn't started writing this command support, but I have written here so that we'll explicitly fail this case and we'll close the loop in the next video, so that this test case also gets passed. Simple. Don't worry about these things will be covering in the next video, but for the sake of it, I'm just trying to close the loop, so that not as a success loop but having it as a placeholder, so that in the next video we'll make this test case also gets passed. Okay, I hope this is clear now. I'll just give a proper summary. So no third party modules, all are like internal net instance, assert and the test, before, after and test. And connect to Redis. So we are just making sure that this is being connected only for the very ones for the specific test case, test file at least, and after it's like trying to close the connection at the very end of the test case. And the send command will make sure that we are sending a command and we'll be having a listeners only once for the data and error for that specific write command. And once if the data we've received is processed like properly, then we need to remove the listener. So as I'm attaching a listener over here, we should make sure that it is being removed. We won't get this max listeners error at this stage, but down the line we'll be having a lot of test cases and we will get that warning message stating that okay, set max listeners has been like the max listeners has been reached, like the default is 10 I guess. So just to prevent that, and also it's a very good practice because as we are attaching this, and this is happening only for each this specific send command. So at least in our case, for this simple test case, right, one single test case, we are passing two send commands, and indirectly inside it will be having two error handlers, though it's once, but we'll be actually hooking two functions at least for this one specific test case, and it keeps building. So we should make sure that the moment we receive the data for that specific send command, we should remove the listener also, and it's very good practice. Clear? Okay, now what we'll do, we'll just start the server over here, and oops, node server.test.js. Okay, so we got two commands, set foo bar and get foo also, and this will fail. As you can see, it is expecting this one as the value, because initially we first set foo bar, so the bar value will be stored in this foo key, but we didn't close the loop of the actual functionality, right? So we are expecting the value as bar, but as you can see in the server.js file, irrespective of any command we pass, we are just passing okay, right? We are just sending the response as okay. So actually is okay, but the expected is this one for the last assertion. Like we have two assertions, so this is all passed. Like if you see over here, test one pass 0, I mean it is treating it as one test case, but one assertion is already done. Maybe if I can just simply comment this out, and if I run the file again, pass it. clear. That's it for second part of the build your own Redis like server. If you have any doubts, feel free to comment down in the video. I'll answer and respond accordingly. And if you see there is any other improvement areas or any suggestions, feel free to drop the comment again. We will combinedly make it more robust and all. I'll make sure all the changes what we have done so far will be pushed to the chapter 2 branch. All right. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.